In considering this demand-supply integration, again, we are looking at mobility demand for moving passenger and freight. That is why we have Caterpillar, why we have FedEx, why we have Walmart. We're really looking at the demand by the user of the transportation system. And again, we start with the reference case so that the reader can understand the basic assumptions. And then we move to what kind of high demand situations will exist. So for example, high economic growth will create a demand for energy, which would create a demand for fuels, and we'll expect more use of transportation. Oil prices might go up. And so we can define a case for what happens as mobility is desired, and then also a case of what happens if mobility demand goes down. And then we ask the question through the three lenses. Well, if I desire an environmental portfolio that really favors protecting the environment, what kind of a mix of fuels and vehicles would I find in that kind of environment? If I'm really looking towards economic growth and competitiveness, how would that portfolio be pushed? Same thing in energy security. Now, we are not going to be focusing on defining these, I think, but we have proxies. There's characteristics of the transportation system which are proxies for these characteristics. So, for example, the easy one is environmental, CO2 equivalent emissions. When you get into U.S. economic growth and competitiveness, you consider the mobility cost per mile. As that goes down, you get more competitive. Infrastructure cost can really affect economic competitiveness and growth, and so can the vehicle costs, the accessibility to a vehicle. In energy security, clearly oil consumption, but the diversity of supply can benefit you, and domestically produced fuels will have a big effect on energy security. And so with these proxies, we'll be able to discuss how would that impact the fuel and vehicle portfolio. As you can see, we're not going to come up with an answer. There is no answer in this, but there is a way to think about the forces that are pushing the mix of fuels and vehicles in different directions, depending on interests, consumer interests, policy interests, industrial interests, and so it'll give you a sense for how that dynamic will possibly work going into 2050. So in considering, in attempting to answer this question and deliver a report to the Secretary of Energy, we developed some high-level integrating questions, and again, you'll see the technology focus. One question we're asking at a very top level is what technology breakthroughs and other conditions could produce transportation portfolios to achieve a minimum of 50% greenhouse gas reduction relative to 2005, again, to answer the Secretary's specific question. A second one is, what are the implications of fuel vehicle portfolios resulting from sustained investments in technology breakthroughs, which will allow us to discuss the possible implications to U.S. economic growth and competitiveness? A third is, what are the impacts of disruptive events on fuel vehicle portfolios, which allows us to discuss the implications of energy security. And these are things such as disruptive events like oil price volatility, supply shortages, and other unforeseen events. And then we always keep in front of us that there are major uncertainties and they affect our conclusions. And so we will highlight those kinds of error bars or uncertainties. That's a very top level. But the intriguing discussions are, come down to, again, the fact that we have a supply mix. How far can the incumbent fuel and internal combustion engine progress by 2050? I mean, that certainly is going, as you bring electric and you bring natural gas in, the incumbent is changing. But the incumbent, you have to remember, is now a hydrocarbon liquid and a biofuel blend. It already is there. The internal combustion engine is picking up the electric motor. In fact, the lunch conversation that we heard yesterday around a 10-mile PHEV gets very intriguing, because is that the incumbent vehicle? And as that continues to improve, and if you look at the diversity of that with the hydrocarbon liquids, the biofuels, and electric, you suddenly have a very intriguing situation. And while that's moving forward, how is natural gas, electric, and hydrogen going to enter that competition, and how will the portfolio evolve? Again, there's no answer. It's a question of timing, probabilities, and breakthroughs. If the money is being invested in technology, you will have more breakthroughs. If the breakthroughs happen faster in one supply chain, they will have a first mover advantage. I mean, these are lots of questions that industrial types, which is the majority of the participants here, really like to wrestle with and should give you a very intriguing report. And then you also will ask the question at the end, you know, what technical breakthroughs and other conditions would allow a revolutionary or disruptive technology to grow its market share, to enter the fray? Some may think hydrogen is disruptive and is entering the fray. I mean, you could take that position. But what else is out there? And so at the heart, these are the kinds of things that are being discussed while we are really looking at these higher level umbrella type of questions. So that's the heart of my conversation today. I want to talk a little bit about the outreach. Part of this is to get input. Like I said, I can't talk about the conclusions yet because we're not there, but I really want to understand what you think are interesting questions that we should be wrestling with or interesting aspects that we should be considering so I could take it to the meeting and we can and discuss it. And so we have a very active outreach. We have level 1 technical reviews. We have several of those. We've had some NGO outreaches. We have more that are scheduled. In the technical reviews, where we're providing, you'll see the experts here on the bottom. We've found some industry experts who are not actively helping us develop the chapters, but who we have already twice put in front of them drafts of some of our thoughts and ideas. And they, of course, will review our scope, technology barriers and gaps and give us guidance on normalization and standardization across the supply chains and help us understand or challenge our thoughts around technology, acceleration, scalability, and reduction. With the NGO community, same thing. We want to understand the issues that are close to their hearts. We have, you see, quite a number of organizations have participated. This is only a sampling. But you'll see the kinds of questions that they ask, and it is interesting. They're not 100% focused on emissions. They are concerned about energy security and economics, and they are interested in the competition among fuels and the study process and scope. And we found that those particular conversations have been very, very enriching, as opposed to being very debative. They are really very informative in terms of how broadly we should be addressing some of these issues. And so with that, that's the end of my conversation.